He didn't even open the final envelope. It had her new last name on it. That was enough. Julian stood in the kitchen, holding that piece of mail like it was a grenade. It was official. The last thread connecting them, gone. And the silence in the house? It was deafening. 3 months had passed since Paige left. She didn't slam the door, she didn't cry. She just said it with eyes full of tired hope. Julian, I can't do this anymore. I miss you, even when you're sitting next to me. That was the last, real sentence she said to him, and he didn't stop her. Not because he didn't love her, but because deep down he thought he was doing the right thing, working hard, building a future, providing. What he didn't realize was that she wasn't asking for more. She was asking for less pressure, less distance, less nights waiting for him to come home after 10. He used to call it just a season. This startup phase won't last forever, he'd say. But forever had already started slipping through his fingers. San Diego kept moving without them. The beach still glowed gold in the evenings. People still laughed at outdoor cafes. But Julian felt like the world had gone grayscale. He stayed in the house, the same one they bought together, the one with the blue shutters she picked out, the one where her laugh used to echo down the hallway. Now, it was just a shell. And the strangest part? She didn't take much. Her clothes, her books. But she left behind a coffee mug with a chip in it, her favorite hoodie in the laundry basket, and a playlist in his Spotify titled Mornings with You. Julian tried to delete it once. He couldn't. He pressed play and broke down. He missed her like air, not just her presence but her rhythm, her sarcasm, her weird habit of talking to plants. You ever realize someone is your entire world? Only after they've walked out the door. That's what was happening to Julian. He was unraveling piece by piece, and no amount of overtime or business wins could sew him back together. His friends told him to move on. But how do you move on from your own heartbeat? One night he walked into their bedroom, and it hit him. Her scent was finally gone. He sat down on the floor, back against the bed, and whispered to the quiet, God, I didn't know it would hurt this much. Then something happened. Not dramatic, not magical, just a shift. He got up, opened his laptop, and typed one line into an email. I miss you, I was wrong. He stared at the cursor, blinking, waiting, hoping, but not expecting. You see, Paige hadn't wanted revenge. She just wanted to feel seen, and sometimes leaving was the loudest way to say, I'm drowning. That was the beginning of something neither of them saw coming. Paige didn't reply right away. Julian checked his inbox 10 times a day, then 20. Then he stopped checking completely, because silence is louder when you're waiting for a sound. But Paige, she was reading the email, over and over. She sat in her sister's apartment on the other side of San Diego, phone in hand, eyes stinging. She wasn't sure why she hadn't deleted it. Maybe because part of her was still hoping he'd say it. I was wrong. He finally did, and that meant something. Paige wasn't bitter. She had loved Julian since college, since he spilled coffee on her thesis paper and stammered out an apology that made her laugh. But somewhere along the way she'd stopped laughing. Work had taken him. Late nights, missed anniversaries, a weekend in Cabo they never used. She used to lie awake and imagine him bursting through the door saying, I'm done chasing numbers, I choose us. But he never did. So she left. It wasn't to punish him, it was to breathe. And yet, now, 3 months later, she still found herself pouring 2 cups of coffee in the morning. She still caught herself talking like he was in the next room. He wasn't, but her heart hadn't gotten the memo. So she replied, not with paragraphs, not with rage, just one line, then show me. Julian read it at 2:14 a.m. He was sitting at the dining table, surrounded by unpaid bills and half-eaten takeout. He blinked, read it again, and suddenly, the air felt different. Then show me. Those 3 words hit harder than any silence. She was giving him a chance, not a guarantee, a chance. And that was more than he deserved. Julian didn't sleep that night. The next morning he did the one thing he hadn't done in years. He left work early. He stopped by a flower shop Paige used to love. The old lady behind the counter smiled. "Back again, huh?" Julian hesitated. "First time in a while," he said. He bought sunflowers, her favorite, and he didn't drop them off. He delivered them. To her. In person. Paige opened the door, expecting a delivery. Instead, there he was. Same blue eyes, same nervous posture. But something had changed. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't distracted. He was just present. "I don't expect anything," Julian said, holding out the flowers. "I just wanted you to know. I hear you now." She didn't take the flowers right away. She studied him. Not his words, his eyes. They weren't tired. They were honest. "Okay," she said softly. "Come in." That night they didn't talk about love or the past. They talked about now. She told him about a new yoga studio she joined. He listened, really listened. He told her he was scared, that he thought work was the only way he could prove he was worthy. She said she never needed him to prove anything. She just needed him to show up. They didn't kiss. They didn't pretend everything was fixed. But they sat on the couch, side by side, two people learning how to be real again. And outside, the San Diego air was cool and quiet, like the world had paused. Just for them. They started with small moments. Breakfast together, not every day, but sometimes. Phone calls that weren't just running late or don't wait up. Little text messages that said things like, "Thought of you when I saw someone wearing that ridiculous hat you love." Paige didn't move back in. Not yet. She needed to trust the change, not just in Julian but in herself. She'd lost pieces of who she was in that marriage, not because of him alone, because she gave too much and asked for too little. So now, she was learning balance, setting boundaries, saying no when her heart needed rest. And Julian, he was learning too. Therapy became a part of his week. At first, he hated it. Talking about feelings felt like weakness. But then the therapist said something that stuck. You can't be present with someone else until you've sat with yourself. So he sat, and what he found inside was grief, for the time he lost, for the birthday dinners he missed, for the way he used to treat love like something you could schedule. It hurt, but the pain wasn't punishment, it was permission to feel, to change, to start over, not with grand gestures but with truth. They started going on walks again, their old Saturday tradition, not to solve things, just to be near each other. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they didn't. And one evening, during one of those quiet walks, Paige looked up at him and said, "You know what's different now?" "What?" "You're not trying to impress me anymore, you're just with me." Julian stopped walking. He looked at her, really looked. "I don't want to impress you," he said. "I want to grow with you." She smiled, and for the first time in months it felt like home wasn't a place. It was a moment. They had dinner one night at their old favorite spot in Little Italy, a quiet rooftop place with twinkling lights and a view of the city they both still loved. It had been 2 months since they reconnected, 2 months of real effort, real listening, real laughter. Julian arrived early. He wore the navy blue shirt Paige always said made his eyes look kinder. He ordered a bottle of the wine they used to drink when they couldn't afford it, because now he understood something money never taught him. Time is the only currency that matters in love. Paige walked in wearing that red dress. The red dress, the one from their 3rd anniversary. Julian stood up, breath caught. She sat down. They toasted, and they talked, about everything and nothing. Then came the moment. Julian reached into his pocket, not for a ring, not yet, for a letter. He slid it across the table. Paige tilted her head. "What is this?" "A letter I wrote the night you left," Julian said. "I never sent it, but I want you to read it, here, with me." Paige opened it slowly. The paper was crumpled at the edges. His handwriting, messier than usual, it began, "Paige, I don't blame you for leaving. I blame me for not seeing you sooner." She kept reading. It wasn't poetic, it wasn't perfect, but it was honest. He wrote about the way she used to hum when she made pancakes, about how he missed her snoring after she insisted she never snored, about how the silence in the house had become unbearable. And at the end, he wrote, "If I ever get the chance again, I won't ask for your forgiveness right away. I'll ask for your trust, and I'll earn it one day at a time." When she finished reading, Paige didn't speak. She reached across the table and took his hand. Her eyes shimmered with tears, not from sadness, but from the weight of a love that had survived the wreckage. "You have no idea," she whispered, "how long I've waited to hear those words." Julian's voice cracked. "I know I can't undo the past, but maybe we can write a new story." She nodded, and for the first time since they signed the divorce papers, she said the words neither of them expected to say again. "Let's go home." The night Paige came home, they didn't celebrate. They didn't pop champagne or play music. They just stood in the entryway of that familiar house, the one they once shared, the one that had grown too quiet. Julian reached for her suitcase, but she stopped him. "Let me carry it this time," she said, her voice soft. It wasn't about the bag. It was about what it meant, and that love shouldn't fall on one set of shoulders. It had to be shared. They walked through the house like explorers, returning to a land they thought they'd lost. Everything was the same, and yet nothing was. The couch still sagged in the middle, her chipped coffee mug still sat by the sink, but the energy in the air, that had changed. There was no more pretending, no more busy schedules hiding, emotional absence, just two people and learning how to love from scratch. They set new rules, not strict ones, gentle ones, phones off at dinner. "No, I'm fine," when they weren't. One night a week just for the two of them. No excuses, no cancellations. They cooked together. They danced in the kitchen again. They laughed at old inside jokes and made new ones. Julian started, showing up not just with flowers but with presence, with silence when she needed it, with questions that had no answers, only listening. Paige began trusting again, letting the walls down, piece by piece, letting him in, not as the man she had divorced, but the man he was becoming. And when they fought, because yes, they still fought, they didn't walk away, they stayed, they leaned in, they learned, because this time they weren't holding on to what they used to be, they were building something better. And that made all the difference. Sometimes love doesn't need a second chance, it needs a second beginning. It was a Sunday morning in April. The air smelled like jasmine. The sun poured through the windows like honey. Julian was in the kitchen making pancakes, a little burnt, a little lopsided, but hers. Paige came in wearing his old college hoodie, barefoot, sleepy-eyed, beautiful. She wrapped her arms around his waist from behind. "You're burning." "Them again," she mumbled. He laughed. "I call it caramelized." She rolled her eyes and kissed his shoulder. It felt easy now, not perfect, but full of grace. They sat down at the table, the same table where months ago Julian had wept alone. Now it was full of crumbs, coffee, and second chances. He reached into his pocket. This time, it wasn't a letter. It was a ring. Simple, classic, new. Just like them. He didn't kneel, he didn't make a speech, he just looked at her, the way you look at something you thought you lost forever. "Let's do this again," he said. Paige blinked, then smiled. A smile that stretched all the way into his ribs. "Do what again?" "Forever," he said, but this time, with eyes open, with hands held tight, with hearts that know how to bend, not break. She took the ring, slipped it on slowly, deliberately, with a kind of reverence. "Okay," she whispered, "let's do it right this time." They didn't rush to the courthouse. They planned something quiet, intimate, just a few close friends, a garden in Balboa Park, barefoot, vows under a sycamore tree. Julian wrote his own. "You taught me that love isn't about being everything. It's about being there for the hard mornings, the heavy days, the quiet evenings. I promise to show up, even when I'm tired, even when I'm scared, because loving you has made me more than I ever was alone." Paige wiped a tear and took his hands. "You don't have to promise me perfection," she said. "Just keep promising me truth, and I'll promise you everything I have." The guests stood in silence. Not because they were stunned, but because they could feel it. This was not a beginning out of impulse, it was a beginning out of fire. They were no longer just married, they were whole. Two people who had walked through heartbreak and come out holding hands. Because sometimes love doesn't end with goodbye. Sometimes it begins there. Years passed gently, not like pages torn from a calendar, but like waves smoothing the shore. Julian and Paige didn't go back to who they were. They became something entirely new, two souls with scars, but also with roots, growing deeper with every season. They bought a little house just outside San Diego, nothing flashy, but the backyard had a lemon tree and space for morning laughter. Their daughter Lily came first, wide eyes, wild curls, and a fearless way of loving. Then came Miles, quiet, thoughtful, with a gaze like his father's. And just like that, the house filled again, not with noise, but with life. Sticky. Hands, late-night feedings, tiny footsteps at 5 a.m. Julian would often look at Paige across the room, hair in a messy bun, shirt stained with applesauce, and feel a kind of peace that money, success, or titles could never offer. Because he had learned that presence beats perfection, that holding someone in their worst is worth more than celebrating them at their best. Some nights, after the kids were asleep, they'd sit on the porch together, barefoot, tired, content. They didn't always say much. But every now and then, Paige would lean her head on his shoulder and whisper, "I'm glad we broke." And Julian would smile, because he knew exactly what she meant. Some love stories don't survive the fall. The rare ones, they rise. Because of it. And if this story moved you or even made you think, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone. And this story is a work of fiction. All characters, names, and situations are entirely made up and are not based on real individuals. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental.